This is the story of an old woman from the Israel who got a golden opportunity. She used it not to get the treasures and objects of the world, but to achieve a high degree in a heaven full of pleasure. What is the story? Let's see the story. The condition of the Israel in the Pharaoh's time was heartbreaking. Therefore the prophet Moses, alaihisalam, tried to bring them out of Egypt. When the prophet Moses took them out on foot, the prophet Moses and the Israel always got lost. Several times they tried it, but the result was always the same. They got lost. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed the prophet Moses and his people to come out, they were lost. Prophet Moses was amazed by it. He believed that there must be a secret. In this matter, the prophet Moses asked those who were with him about what happened. Finally, some leaders of the sons of Israel said to the prophet Moses, "We tell you that Joseph has taken a promise for us in the name of Allah that we will not leave Egypt unless we take his bones with us." Then the prophet Moses, alaihi salam, asked them, "Who among you knows Joseph's grave?" They answered that only one who knew where. Joseph's grave was an old woman from Israel. Then the prophet Moses, alaihi salam, asked the head of the Israel to present the old woman. After the old woman was in front of the prophet Moses, alaihi salam, then the prophet Moses said to him, "Show me where Joseph's grave is." Moses asked him to show him the tomb of Joseph, to bring his body when he came out of Egypt with the Israel. The old woman replied, "I do not want to show it until I am allowed to accompany you in heaven." The old woman refused the request of the prophet Moses, alaihi salam, except on the condition that she must accompany the prophet Moses on the day of judgment in heaven. At first, the prophet Moses did not like the request of the old woman, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the prophet Moses to grant his request. Allah granted what the old woman asked. Then the old woman took the Israel to a lake. Arriving at the intended lake, the old woman asked the Israel to dry the lake. They then together drained the lake water. When the lake water had receded, the old woman then said, pointing to a place in the middle of the lake, "So hear the Israel and dig it." After reaching a certain depth, they finally found the bones of the prophet Joseph, alaihi salam. They then collected the bones and wrapped them, then raised them to the ground. Once they were lifted from the excavation ground, the road immediately looked as real as light during the day, so that the prophet Musa alaihi salam and the children of Israel can continue their journey to leave Egypt. This story was once conveyed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of his friend and a clown. At that time, a Bedouin came to meet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was at his request. Previously, the Prophet had visited the house of the Badui. The Bedouin entertained the Prophet with honor and glorified him. Then the Prophet asked him to come to him in order to repay kindness with kindness. When the Bedouin came, the Prophet asked what he wanted. The Bedouin also asked for a little of the world's property, in the form of a female camel with a saddle as a mount and a female sheep that could be relied on. The Prophet's milk felt the request, and desire of the Bedouin was trivial. So he conveyed a hadith about the old woman of the Israel who expressed a big request to the Prophet Moses, when the opportunity was open like the story at the beginning, the old woman did not demand gold and silver from her messenger, and did not ask for camels or cows or goats. If the Bedouin had asked the prophet as the old woman requested, when the prophet opened the opportunity to ask for her, she would have been very lucky. The prophet's prayer mustajab, if he had asked him for prayers for the good of the hereafter, he would have achieved much good. And whoever asks Allah for a high cause, Allah will grant his request, even though he does not attain the degree of those who are entitled to attain it. Whoever seeks shahada with truth, Allah will convey it to the degree of those who die sahid, even though he died on his bed. Whoever asks for the degree of scholars or generous people, Allah will convey it to their degree, even though he does not do charity like them. Thus, before our story this time, hopefully we get lessons and wisdom to do various practices in order to seek a high degree, and may we continue the spirit of fulfilling our obligations and duties in accordance with the Sharia that has been commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, is so that we always get tawfiq and guidance.